So I suppose there are those of you out there that at this point feel like I'm just being unfair to the Sony, so I'm going to show you the bad motion I'm talking about using Pacific Rim. So without any further ado, I want you to pay attention how when the characters start walking, the image starts juddering. Look at all that judder right there. Okay, now we're going to run the scene back and then do it on the C10. All right, so now here we are on the C10. We're going to run that same scene again. For it, notice how much smoother it is, not as much juddering. That's what I'm talking about. Now here we are back over on the Sony. I'm going to play this scene. It's an action scene in Pacific Rim, the kind that I'm talking about. Watch how bad motion gets when the fist enters the building. It's smeary. Now we're going to run this on the C10 now. So here we are on the C10. We're going to run that same scene. Look at how smooth that is. Now this is going to be a little tricky, but let's try to get them both in the same frame on that same exact scene. Notice how the Sony just has way more motion artifacting and blurring on the scene. Now here we are back on the Sony. I want to show you guys this particular scene because I think it will show a lot of the judder of the particle effects that I'm talking about. So when we hit play, notice how the sparks just keep juddering. Look behind the character. Just look behind him. Now I want you to pay close attention to this area over here and how jittery all of this actually ends up being. All right? So I'm going to hit play now. All of that jitter and judder. That's what I'm talking about. We're going to run the same thing on the C10 now. All right, so we're over here on the C10. Pay close attention to this middle area here. All right? It's a lot smoother. Like a lot smoother. Now, just like the Sony, I want you to pay close attention to all of the area around here. Notice how much smoother it is. Now I want you guys to pay close attention to both TVs. I want you to notice how the Sony has the better color right now. The color accuracy is there, where the C10 doesn't have that in this scene. Some darker scenes on the C10 in HDR can look exactly like this, where it starts getting a little bit more dead by comparison to the Sony. So again, when I said it had better color accuracy, it does. This has better color accuracy because it doesn't do this where, because there is mostly a dark scene here, it's trying to darken everything in the scene, and as a result, your colors take a hit. The Sony doesn't do that. I wasn't mistaken when I told you this is the best HDR TV, but for my preference overall, the C10 gets a lot of the stuff I'm looking for correct. And so that's why it's my winner. But now we're going to play the same exact scene on both of these TVs, and I want you to pay close attention to the sparks behind the character. This is going to show you the motion I'm talking about when we talk about particle effects. Look at how juddery it is on the Sony. You can't tell me you don't see that. Now, when we're going to play the scene out, you're going to notice all in this area here on both TVs, the Sony is just going to have way more judder. Check it out. You can't tell me you didn't see that. Chopping, juddering. That's the Sony's experience overall. It's not smooth, right? And this is the kind of thing that kind of proves what I'm saying as much as I can show you on YouTube. It's not ideal, but again, it is what it is. Now in this scene, I also want you to pay attention to the Sony to the left, and I want you to look at, again, just how jittery the motion can be, how it kind of almost breaks apart by comparison to the C10 to the right. So here we go. You ready? We're going to hit it. This is bad motion, dude. I don't know if that really came through, so maybe I'll get closer. All right, so we're going to try this again on the Sony. Maybe you guys can see it, maybe you can't. That part right there. Here's another scene that is a prime example of the C10 looking better. Look at that. That's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. That crappy, slow, jerky nonsense. We'll run that back in real time so you guys can see that again. Okay. The explosion happens. Kaiju pops out of the water looking 3D on the LG. Sony is just not keeping up. And that punch, that slow, smeary, juddery punch, that is what I'm talking about. That is not smooth. So we're gonna show you again the punches in this scene. This is the kind of stuff that lets me know that the C10 is better than the Sony A90J for motion. So I want you to pay close attention to how this TV, the A90J, starts smearing and juddering and the C10 remains smooth and clear. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about better motion. And before anybody tries to say that I went into the motion settings and purposely did anything to make the Sony worse, I'm going to show you my motion settings. So if you go into motion flow, you go into custom, I've got motion maxed out, clearness on minimum, and cinemotion set to high. There's just no outcome where I'm doing anything to hurt the Sony. So for anyone trying to type that in the comments, show us your motion settings. Well, there you go. Now check this out. You saw that in real time. You can slow it down on YouTube to really see it, but it's pretty damn bad. And that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Now, something that's a bit of a separate note, if you look, the Sony has better shadow detail, like I was saying in the video. If you look, the C10 is just black crushing way too much. It finds something that's supposed to be a dark object and it crushes that stuff down, and you've got to work really hard to get out of that, and honestly, you're still going to experience some black crush, as you're seeing to the right, and this is what it actually looks like as I look down with my naked eye, more or less. The C10 is definitely experiencing stronger black crush than the Sony A90J by comparison. So again, each TV brings their strengths and their weaknesses. And when I give a video like I did yesterday explaining all that stuff, I really don't want to hear it when people have opinions about it being one thing over the other when I'm showing the facts. It's like you can be emotional about it, you can have your opinions, that's fine, but don't try to replace the facts with your opinion. I don't care what I said about the C10 before I updated it, before I learned about the BT 2020 menu. I'm not using that here because it defaults to BT 2020 by default, but I'm just giving you a point here. I don't care what I said in the past about the C10. Stop living in the past and listen to what I've said recently about it. Listen to what has changed and how I've arrived at the new conclusions before you start getting upset that the Sony A90J, in my personal opinion, loses to the C10. Even though the C10 right now has the worst image, it goes and it does one of these. It flip-flops. They go back and forth, and there are moments where the C10 just outperforms the Sony. And for the kind of money that the Sony costs, that's not something that I would have expected. And that's the point here. Now, you guys probably already saw it in this video. Some will deny it. But motion is definitely something that is not the strongest suit on the Sony A90J. If I need to show this off even more, by all means, let me know. I'll show you some more. I'm not hiding anything here. The Sony A90J is just not the strongest performer with motion. Now, a perfect example of them switching and looking different and just Sony now looks worse than the LG for shadow detail is going to be the scene right here. The water is more accurate on the LG C10. That's not going to show up on camera, but you're just going to have to roll with it and understand that's what I'm trying to show you here. Now, you check this out, you can see around here, it's focusing on this highlight, but as a result, it's darkening the water around it. That is the choice that Sony goes with. LG is brightening the highlight, but also brightening the water. So you can clearly see there's a difference in the way that they choose to tone map. Sony is trying to highlight and focus on one detail and darken the rest to make that stand out. LG is trying to light the scene more intelligently, if you will. So again, each company has their strengths and their weaknesses, and if you're going to get caught up in me reporting what those are, maybe this is not the channel that you should watch, because I'm just going to be honest with you. That being said, both of these are my personal TVs. I love both of these TVs. They're not going anywhere, and I think I can talk about the differences for those who want to know them. So maybe try to lighten up a bit. Thanks for watching the #1 brand in honesty, and until the next video, I'll see you guys later.